Broadcasting from the Symphony Studios in Marietta, Georgia, it's time for the Technology Harmony Podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. Tune in every week as we spotlight the very best minds in our industry. Now here are your hosts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of the Technology Harmony Podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. I'm one of your hosts, Katie Galley, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Symphony COO, Eric Bittner. How are you doing, Eric?
Good to see you, Katie. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me today. So this is our first time co-hosting an episode. So you excited?
I'm terrified.
You're terrified. I don't believe that. I think you're excited. It's going to be good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're both really excited because today in our Symphony studio with us, we have Principal at DAS Advisors, John Campbell. How are you doing, John?
Doing very well, Katie.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by and talking with us and sharing your story with us today.
Appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. So, John, just to get the ball rolling, to get to know your background a little bit, can you tell us about your professional journey and how you ended up with the job that you have today?
So about 30 years ago, I was a director for a engineering company that did a lot of civil engineering. I was introduced to the wireless industry through a couple of clients that really just simply walked through the front door. About a year later, I left that firm and opened up the company I have now with a partner or two. And over the first few years, we started doing work for really all of the carriers in the market, some regional carriers as well as the national four, if you will. And then about 15 years ago, we identified a need for consulting work and consulting services to venues across the country that had indoor coverage problems. So we've been really dedicated to that market, serving that client base for the last 15 years.
Wow.
So, John, what do you think DAS Advisors is famous for? You don't have to object to the word famous.
I think our reputation really is in advocating for facility owners, venue owners around the country, in both reviewing the technologies available to solve those indoor problems and to coordinate communications and contracting with the different carriers, which can be as simple as coordinating a signal source or actually attracting the capital required to build and operate the indoor system.
And are you able to tell us about some of your customers? And I know
Sure,
you have
absolutely.
blue chip tier one customers.
Sure. My first project was a Toyota manufacturing plant. The Japanese were way ahead of the curve in terms of understanding that cellular coverage indoor was a very critical and valuable component to their operations. We've worked with West Virginia University, University of Miami, Georgia State. We're now working with Yale and University of Nebraska Medical Center. We do have a strong client in Caesars Entertainment, which we're now taking care of about 42 of their properties across the country. So.
And the U.S. Senate building.
Oh, and the U.S. Senate, my favorite project.
Just, whatever, those guys.
Well, it has been a long process.
Oh, you're trying to forget it. That's
might be, but we hope to start that project. Actually, we brought the carriers together to fund that project, and we hope to get that project started in the fourth quarter.
Sure, and we'll have to kill each other if you tell us any more detail than that.
Probably so.
Probably so. Hey, so I won't mention how many centuries you've been around, but you've been around for a while, and you've seen the landscape change significantly with respect to negotiating with what we sometimes call wireless service providers or WSPs, or I'll just say simply carriers, the AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. Right. How has that landscape changed in the course of time that you've been assisting customers negotiating with them?
Well, I think before, let's say, the 2015, most of the carriers were working through different third-party operators like the tower companies like Crown, American Tower, and SBA. That shifted in 2015, and the basis for the shift was that the third parties, the cost of having a third party involved was becoming very unacceptable to the carriers. So really from there, it became pretty much a free-for-all. The three PAs were out trying to contract with venues for their services. Carriers were out trying to identify properties that they wanted to see indoor coverage. And then facility owners were actually out trying to attract the carriers, attract the capital to address their problems as well. That has kind of settled in. The three POs are still involved in the major projects around the country, most of the stadiums. But the carriers really do prefer to work directly with the property owner. It cuts down their costs, but it also, from an operational standpoint, over that 15 or 20-year contract, allows them to be more intimately involved with the owner and not having to go through a third party for communication.
Sure. Actually can facilitate upgrades kind of at a more reasonable pace as you move from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5G.
Exactly. And we really support the idea of quarterly or semi-annual meetings with the carriers that are within a facility so that they can do planning and the facility owner can do planning.
Sure.
A lot of facilities are renovated, between 7 and 10 years. Those renovations impact the DAS that's involved and the carriers involved, and consequence of not planning that is pretty severe, frankly.
So you mentioned funding the Senate building. Is there money out there for DAS, for the in-building cellular enhancement system? And if so, what's the criteria other than having a facility in a Super Bowl city? Because I know that's one. So anybody out there needing DAS funding, pray the Super Bowl comes to your city.
Well, that does help. There's no question. There's special funding for major events around the country, and Super Bowl is probably on the top of the pyramid in terms of the carrier's investment.
So shy of that, is there money out there?
There is. Yeah, absolutely. And certainly not for every project. But there is, and we have through the years, every year attracted funds to projects that we've been involved with. I think we'll actually attract more than $30 million this year in carrier contributions to our clients' projects, which is great. And it helps the carriers too, as far as being able to develop their network, protect their network, and in a sense, add capacity to a market.
Sure, and that's probably the main criteria, I would think. Again, unless you're the Senate building or a stadium, the main criteria is how does the DAS in my building help the carrier with his capacity for his or her larger service needs? Absolutely.
So it's really about network perfection. As we keep using our phones, and that you can argue about the percentage increase, but between 30 and 40% increase in usage of cell phones for data and voice year after year. Every system, every network has a capacity limit, and as the carriers get close to that limit, they're more and more interested in solving that problem. So they'll try to solve it with macro cells first, small cells second, and the most expensive solution, but sometimes the only solution, is an indoor DAS. So the idea is and a DAS is an isolated network. It takes those phones that are using the DAS off the overall network. So for, let's say, a Pittsburgh that needs that AT&T needs to pull or push into that downtown area more capacity, they'll begin to look for opportunities to fund a DAS. My job is to identify that opportunity. One, to assess whether or not it's possible, but two, to offer the facility up to the carriers and present it so that they have confidence that if they do budget a project, that it will get deployed.
So I could have a huge, gorgeous, double A quality facility, and the carriers go, hey, we're good here. We've got a lot of great signal. So really, I need someone to help me navigate performance data that's, I'm sure, very obscure, that comes from the carriers and the carrier funding cycles to assist me to try to get some help there.
Right, and you hit a good point, because an RF engineer in Kansas City may want to do a Marriott, but doesn't have the budget this year. You might have to get on a list and have that project develop over a period of time. It's really difficult to get all three carriers on a system at one time. It's done and we do it, but there's a lot of finesse in the process of getting your project considered onto a budget, onto a schedule, and then ultimately deployed.
So I'm hearing low probability, but possible, requires a lot of patience, and it would be better if you could fund it yourself in most cases. So let me throw a hypothetical at you. So I'm a building owner. I don't have budget, but I have poor cell coverage in my building. I've talked to all the carriers. They're like, nah, we're not interested in you. You're too small. Our network works fine. I'm not in a Super Bowl city. Do I have any options, or is that do I just have to bite the bullet and pay for this myself?
Well, very few options, but frankly, you only have the choice is how do you pay for it. So you can make a capital investment. There are firms that you can bring into your facility that are willing to deploy a system, and either look to the carriers to pay that monthly payment to warrant the capital investment, or to look to the venue owner to make those payments. And
sure,
there is a hybrid between those two, that
gotcha.
An owner may guarantee a certain level of revenue to offset the capital investment, but leave that third party to bring in a carrier at a later date that would then pay some type of offsetting revenue.
Do you very often see the rooftop rights or a small cell deployment on site being of value, kind of doing a quid pro quo with the carrier?
It is. We recently did a hospital in Texas where we essentially traded rooftop rights for an indoor DAS.
Oh.
And it was a fair swap, if you will. It got the hospital what they needed. We had been trying to attract carriers in that hospital for quite a while. They did not have a budget for a DAS. And Verizon, in talking with Verizon, we found out they needed a macro site, and we essentially traded that site for an indoor system. So everyone won on that one.
So very helpful confluence of various factors, but it sounds to me like there's a lot of serendipity in this.
Yes, absolutely.
The stars have to align in more than just two.
They have to align, and you have to understand that a window opens and a window closes. So
okay.
If you've identified the fact that a carrier needs a solution, they're out looking for less expensive options. So number one, you need to make it easy and make it available, and to be very transparent in terms of your cost or their costs, and reasonable in your contract negotiations.
So I'm going to rotate off that. That was really helpful. I hope some of our listeners are able to get some value from that, and I'm sure they can contact you if they think they may have an opportunity. CBRS, I think some people may not know, that's the frequency that the FCC recently made available for private LTE networks, which the carriers will also share. So it's a shared spectrum, which is unique to the way it's ever been done in the U.S. before. But it enables owners to build a private LTE network, which may or may not also then be able to carry public cellular traffic. And that's just for I know you know that, John, but do you see that changing the typical business relationship between a building owner and a carrier? Do you think there's traction there? I know there are a lot of applications for private LTE use that could either replace or augment Wi-Fi. But I'm just talking about in terms of making the cell coverage experience better in a building. Do you think that it has legs? It will change things?
It probably does, but I think it's unproven yet. I think there are a lot of large facility owners or large third-party operators that are looking towards how expending the capital required to deploy a CBRS system, how that is offsetted by relationships or contracts with the carriers. There's been a couple of theories. What I'd love to see is that the carriers would look at it as a cost comparable to a roaming charge that they would pay to another carrier if they're not, say, in the mountains of West Virginia, but one of their customers drives through and needs that system. So it's unproven territory. What I like most about it, frankly, is that it does give facility owners a new option in terms of wireless services within their building that they do control. And as you well know, it allows them also to collect a lot of data that they would not normally have access to. So
sure. I mean, same kind of data you can get off a Wi-Fi network, but you're not usually getting it from a cellular network.
Right, exactly.
Carrier. And I know, you and I are even working on some projects together where the customers being able to justify that CBRS network purely for private reasons. Just, you mentioned gaming. I know that Nevada Gaming Commission has basically, I don't know if it's officially been approved, but they basically never allowed devices to be on Wi-Fi, but they're willing to allow devices to be on CBRS because they significantly enhance security. So the ability to remotely connect devices on a very secure network, it really changes with CBRS.
It does change, and it's the encryption option that the private network allows does give you some options you haven't had otherwise, and certainly the gaming industry would benefit from having more of their equipment, including slot machines, not stagnant, but be able to move around in a casino floor.
Anybody with a large venue is thinking about it because of all the expansion, trying to get wired infrastructure out, and the limitations of Wi-Fi. I know for our customers, they're asking about, well, does the CBRS also have play in terms of cellular? And we're like, you're going to have to wait and see. And I don't know, it sounds like you've got some pretty much same answer, is you're going to have to wait and see how this is out.
I think within the year we'll know, and we'll know whether or not there may be a revenue opportunity with the carriers. I mean, you are controlling your space, and the argument is that whether it's wirelessly through your system or an independent DAS, you are controlling that space, and there is value there to the carriers, and it warrants a revenue opportunity. Mm-hmm. So,
if you manage to persuade them of that, then I think you will be the toast of every town in the country. Hey,
we'll see what happens.
Katie, we're about to wrap up, I think. Can I ask my one last question? Are we good?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah. So, John, I'll put you on the spot. Tell me your favorite success story.
Wow. I think I said earlier that marrying my wife was my absolute favorite success story.
Mine too.
I think what I'm most proud of, frankly, is that if you go back those 15 years, and actually even with my carrier relationships, excuse me, we have a great reputation for being honest and trying to find ways to...
Honest, hang on. Did I hear that word?
Absolutely.
Honest? In this case?
I couldn't be sitting here today if we weren't, frankly. But no, I think we approach the market where we can find places where everyone can win.
So kind of we're the guys that you can trust to tell you what's really going on, even if it's not great news.
That's very important. I know there's some consultants out there that would like to take the chance that they can carry a project through. We're very frank with our clients, manage their expectations, and we're not the final word in a project if we're really looking at a carrier-funded project. But we will go after the carriers. We have a great relationship. We tend to get good answers quickly, and that may be an answer that our clients don't want to hear. But frankly, the sooner they get that information, the better their decisions are going to be. So.
Well, I'm eager to hear more about the Senate building solution, because I know you've got all kinds of fascinating technologies going in there above and beyond just the cellular piece.
You'll probably never know, Eric.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole point. I was trying to pry it out of you, and couldn't make it happen.
No, the first thing we have to do is get our beloved senators cellular coverage in their offices, and everything is layered on upon that.
Keep them safe. And I know I can speculate. I'm sure there's all kinds of security, shooter detection, and all sorts of technologies like that to allow for increased safety.
There are a lot of options, and the system is built for expanding over the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Well, I will say that in my experience in working with you, it has been the case that you have generally, there's the whole sales mantra, under promise and over deliver. I never liked that, because like you're telling the customer, I can't do it. And then you do it, it's like, I need some stability here. I think you do a really good job of managing expectation until you deliver, at about 95% of what you actually deliver. So you deliver a good solid 5-10% over what you're telling the customer you can probably deliver. So it's not like so far removed that I'm thinking, what do I want to work with this guy for? He can't do anything for me. But you legitimately have the kind of carrier contacts, and more than anything, just kind of, if I may, get on the bandwagon for you. I do find that you have a really good sense of where the carrier priorities and interests are. Sometimes to my enormous disappointment, like, seriously, they're not interested in this?
Right.
I'm sorry, they're not. I've talked to the right people, and they say no. Ask me in 2 or 3 years, and of course, 2 or 3 years is a lifetime for a developer. But I do appreciate that. The information is good.
Well, communicating with the carriers is the key, and being able to help them make decisions and providing them the right information to base the decision on is very important.
Yeah, you know what? I remember you saying, even though I work for the customers, I am an advocate for the carriers too. And
you have to be.
That.
Mm-hmm. They have problems that we can help solve, and the reverse is true as well. Super.
Well, I'm so grateful for you joining us, and just for the opportunity to have a relationship with you over the years, and being able to glean from your wisdom.
Oh, I think Katie should interview you next. You have a lot of wisdom to share.
Water out.
It's coming up. A Symphony going to interview Eric, and there is we did a couple thought leader series out there with featuring Eric. So yeah.
Cool.
I'm talking.
Well, John, too. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. If someone wanted to learn more about you or about DAS Advisors, where might they do that?
Very simply, you could email me at johncampbell@dasadvisors.com. We have a website that has my contact information as well. So it's dasadvisors.com.
Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest and their company, check out the show notes for the relevant links. If you would like to learn more about us here at Symphony, of course, subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Symphony Technology Solutions, and on Instagram at Symphony Tech Solutions. Here at Symphony, our ultimate goal is to make harmonious music out of all the technological noise. And we hope today's episode helped in doing just that. See you next time.